Austin Hyde, 5/26/2024. Today has been rough. I have been wondering if I have said too much recently. What can almost be taken as talking to death? What leads talking too much toward the road of change and speaking too much on change? What can lead toward a demanding tone overall? What I don't think leads to the best mechanisms of change. I have also had a lot of problems with ideation and the stream of consciousness that comes after a pivotal idea that almost makes the idea something mute in light of everything else that has been said, trying to escape the idea or leave it well enough back to the realm of ideation rather than idea itself. I have come to this today, particularly when speaking to my siblings about my current provocation, what led to both of these consequences, when then attempting to express the idea with more clarity for these sake. Perhaps maybe just a more lengthy proof to show enough consideration for practice and theory, to show enough real-world application and consideration for ideas being ideals, for ideals being ideals. But then, since change is obviously true, then ideals have some truth. It wasn't necessarily an ideal that I was embarking on, much more a limit with the obvious experiences that I was having, and then dealing with comparisons and the ideas of sins and comparisons as to the way that the world works. If that is how it has been working for me, I would like to think that if I can express something correct, then its expression outside of practice becomes easier. Then with that being said, the idea that I had in mind was the competency that I was being assigned. But what I felt when compared with initial impressions of work recent before an event obviously shows that there is much more to provision and competency that meets the eye. What if I think that if anyone had much good in mind, then the ideal form of competency leads to an ideal? That being, the experiences that I have endured have been very real, which is why I have done my best to stay sharp and show that even now, under all this pressure, I can still do such things. What should only work to show this more, and that it was no mere incident that I was able to perform them before. Then the ideas of works from a grace to a grace. What though is an ideal if you can recognize grace in work? The extent thought that gave confidence to the statement itself was along the spirit of, it's a complicated world out there. It makes no sense from a competitive standpoint how other people are competitive. That's a logical fallacy. Arrested for something too complicated for me to understand. What stands as a statement against charges if the images seen look competitive? But then I am in no way able to procure a means for survival. Then it must be that some truth resides in the ability that the better something is, the easier it can make a thing. What means that it forwards its own end unto this complex of an idea, perhaps. An example being a famous person, the better they are, makes it easier for people to be people, but then forwards the idea that people are people. Same with the ideas of money and the likeness of most things, as much with money and a separation of belief and work. Where though, the more that it is your work, then the more it is belief. What then I say that it was me that was being inexplicably belittled if I offered direct and short explanations of things? Does this mean that they are the best there is? No, I did not say that. But my right to be is certainly questioned, and my ability to defend myself. And then it does bring up obvious disparities and gaps in wealth and attention and pleasure mechanisms in the world near me and broad, when the label that has been placed on things represents the idea that systems are in place, but don't account for the idea of a broad and narrow truth. Being the same thing, if you are able to say and understand these things, then where does the thing come from that adulters this idea that the better things are the more they become a constant that allows personal growth? I could say that to say I know all things is unwise, and that these statements are certainly going off of working conditions that promote either ideals by a condition, if this statement is inherently true, or an ideal statement where then it works to prove itself in many ways, where the unknown part of this work is obviously observed in the direct recourse of disputed competency. There is a sort of double irony involved, what allows it to prove itself along multiple fronts and expressions. Whether it is simple or ideal, true or personal, right or wrong, unto there being real belief, if I can't say that this connects with anything, the way that it almost only makes sense is if I say, how could I be told I have so many problems and then be able to accomplish this end? Then either some great work is at play, or I truly am a fool for being had the way I was. Then the world is completely an unfair place, where then even more so I think that this serves this again, that then the way to tackle the problem that isn't upfront about problems and the problem with problems is that this should work to show this, and I don't know how that could be untrue unless we say that everything is everything, what has been said before, in which case I just spent an hour doing exactly what everyone else is doing, with this idea added to that, of course. And I don't know how someone could say then that I didn't use a pen and paper to accomplish this without a huge portion of this, which should be ideal, not bad.